Okay, since we're having a conversation, I suggest that we just roll into the final session and that we also ask some of these speakers who spoke during the day to contribute to this. And already the questions are opening up to broader questions about research, radical research. So I suggest we just carry on. We must finish by 5:30. Without any by so we have a little time frame there. But I just like to acknowledge what's happening here and for us to roll along into the general discussion.
Do you want the other speakers to come in front?
We could sitting here in the audience rather than marking a division between the speakers. This evening's cover has been doing so as a compare. Oh, I was going to ask that to carry on. And to invite people who have spoken already to come in and say something. I have a thought myself, which is that the people who don't like stories and who like to be very, very normal, you can't find anything more normal than a psychologist. The psychologist who tries to tell you what the world is really factually like. I remember years and years ago, there was a clinical psychologist in the department where I was teaching who was telling us about a young woman who thought that she was shrinking, that she was losing weight. And he wanted to put her on the scales to show her her real weight. And one of the students from the audience said, I wonder what she meant by the fact she was wasting away and losing her weight. And the clinical psychologist said, meant she was wrong. So that's one thing. And what Saba opens up is the possibility for alternate realities, alternative ways of being, which I think is really, really important. And I think maybe there's a connection here, not only with Perigibanye and the connection between the inside and the outside, but also a connection with psychoanalysis. I'm thinking of the statement that Jacques Lacan made in Seminar 24, I think it was, where he said, truth is structured like a fiction. There's something about the stories that we tell ourselves that reveal more than an appeal to fact, to reality. Because when you're appealing to fact or reality, you're making a kind of fictional point about the world we share and the kind of reality that we share. I'll leave it there and ask someone else to come in and contradict that or say something different.
What you've just said, Ian, reminds me of this concept in philosophy, which is called the fallacy of the perfect dictionary. That somehow there is an ideal language there that once you can grasp that language, you could explain reality in a complete factualness, which is irrefutable or unchallengeable. My mind kept going to metaphysics when people were talking. I really love metaphysics, and I think it's really sad that they don't teach metaphysics to a lot of scientists or to psychologists. So, like, one thing that when people sort of like use the word psych or psyche, is like I'm trying to think, what is this thing called the psyche that people purport to be analysing? What is that thing, the psyche? What metaphysically? What are you guys trying to analyse?
I'm not touching that.
Well, from a philosophy student, it doesn't have to be immaterial. So the psyche can also be material too. There's lots of views for that. So it can still be like physicalists and believe in the fully material world, and still believe in psychoanalysis. And yeah, everything to that.
Okay.
Yeah, but what I want to say is actually a bit weird. Because I think in the sphere of academia, in the sphere of critical psychology, psychoanalysis, philosophy, we can talk about different forms of realities. We can talk about abstract ideas, we can talk about different things. But outside of this academia, people are living. And oppression is something very, very real. And genocide is very, very real. So I think it can be problematic when we are talking about politics to use this discourse. Because then you would say that, oh, no, Israeli people are doing this or that. And please look at the way that they are looking at reality, which is indeed problematic. Or, 1% of the people who are ruling on us would say that, oh, use, this reality, look at the reality from another angle, because we worked hard, and you, 99% of people, didn't work hard, and because of this, you are living in this poverty. So I guess how we can also look at lives of people outside of academia, very poor working class people who even do not have this equipment, this discourse, to can paint, to can write, or can think about different forms of reality. I think outside of academia, there is one reality, and we should acknowledge this reality. Otherwise, we are complicit also in this poverty, in this genocide, or what horrible things are happening outside of this academia.
Yes, I agree with the fact that it's very important to acknowledge the reality of what's going on and how the powerful are using this kind of post-truth, etc., almost Orwellian, language, and that is a problem. But also, there is another problem, which is capitalism, and that is the belief systems in ways. And the ultimate realities, I think, the idea of ultimate realities are important because they give us a glimpse of something else that is not what we've just experienced for the past 400 years. So
yeah, thank you. Just thank you for bringing up, because I think that's an issue that I grapple with all the time, and I particularly in my therapeutic practice. So I work with homeless people. I also within my activism, because for us, like recognizing the painful aspects of the story and trying to change the story, yeah, it's part of our activism. But it's illusory. We just tell ourselves nice stories about ourselves. It's not going to change the system as well. I think that's the kind of, thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to mention that.
It's just in response to Lacan's argument about truth is structured like fiction. And I was thinking just a minute ago about, with the whole Trump US administration, it's like the fiction is structured like the truth, so that they use the AI systems, they use the AI images and the videos, the Gaza River, the Trumpian Gaza Riverfront, whatever he calls it. And it's like the fiction is repeated so many times that they make it the truth. And it's this kind of Nietzschean logic of, if you repeat it so many times, it will just become the truth. And then it just becomes the way that the media talk about it and the politicians and the social influence. And I think that's the danger zone at the moment, is this idea of like the AI systems are being used. I mean, the Elon Musk and Grok and all those systems, that they have the code written into it that's kind of moving towards more right-wing extremist positions, like the Mecca Hitler thing that was, I can't remember what it was about, but it's very concerning. I think that's the media fronts the point that we need to kind of not just do it academically and philosophically, but also practically and socially in different fronts. So obviously university context is important, but then there's also the demonstrations and the social action and everything else that we do in whatever capacity that we can do that. So I like the Lacanian stuff, but I think we also need to reverse that as well and think about it. When Trump says anything, or when whenever he says anything, I just think the opposite. It's like the European Research Forum wasn't about researching about Europe; it was kind of demolishing it. So I think a lot of the things that are coming out of the US administration and Israel at the moment, if you just look at the argument and just turn it upside down, you've basically got their position. So I think that's generally how I think about things at the moment. I just think the opposite of what they're saying. You get to the point with it. But that's
Every accusation is a confession.
Yeah.
It's the other way around.
Yeah.
So one of the I've been thinking about what you were just talking about as well, and how I was thinking that coming here to a forum like this gives me personally an opportunity to explore, like really push my thinking to the limit. So to prepare for this, it's almost like being in an altered state of consciousness to get to see something in a new and different way. And I think that's one of the great things about theory. Actually using a theoretical approach enables you to see things that you didn't see before, that you couldn't see before, because you look at it from a completely different perspective. But at the same time, I am also an activist. I believe that we need to change the world. We can't just look at what's happening and stand by, that social justice is really important. And I do that in my academic work as well. But how do those two things tie together? And I actually think that the looking at things in a completely new way, that feeds into the being an activist academic. Do you know what I mean? Because that enables you to show things to people that maybe they just couldn't see before, because they haven't had that angle, or they haven't had those. I always think theory is like a pair of glasses that you wear and you see things differently, but they haven't been able to look at the thing with those glasses. And so, when I present in different ways. So I present at conferences like this where I'm really thinking about a theoretical conceptualization of something, but I also present at conferences where I'm getting a very stark message across. The government needs to change this because it's harmful to children. That's my message about screens. So I present in a very different way there. But thinking like this, thinking theoretically, thinking conceptually, thinking through psychoanalysis, through totally different lenses, is what enables me to be an activist somehow as well, because I'm seeing things in that new way, and having both of those things going on together. Because I totally agree. You can't just be like, oh yeah, let's think these deep thoughts about something. It's got to be so much more than that. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be that we want to make a difference. And I felt that every story that was told today was about that. Do you know what I mean? Every story was about activism, really, as well as about conceptualization.
I mean, you brought it perfectly to what I was going to say then, because to me, it really is about what we've been talking about in terms of capitalism. Your point, we are in a world that, first of all, to agree with you with what you said in terms of the university's opportunity to give to have these discussions, because there is a major suppression of truth. And if you look at just the media, we say newspapers, just 60 years ago, you would have thought that was the point of truth. That was where you found out what had happened yesterday. And it was factually true, and there was no suggestion that it could be something else. Now you have absolutely no idea whether it's true, because it's all written from somebody else's angle. And the reason for this is ultimately greed. The media is controlled by people who've got more money and more power. There is money and power driving our current world. I mean, sorry, that was my degree, globalization and the rest of it. And I know that's what's underpinning it. And it's all those decisions
right down to, you know, we can go to Iran, we can go to Israel, we can go, the people who push those decisions, right down to whether or not we're going to sit children in front of computers, because actually it's quite convenient if you're going to sack half the teaching staff and put them only with, you know, the lowest paid support staff. You know what I mean? I could go on all day. I think that you know, where does the reality come in? So you're right, you know, there needs to be a reality check. I think there's real mileage in it. What I've seen here today, it's actually been inspiring to me, very, very much so. But I guess I go away from here, just like I do in the activism, kind of saying, well, what happens in this microcosm of this here now? We go back out into the world, which is, you know, how much can we influence it to be different?
So one hand just
I've been listening a lot to what's been said about sort of basically what's happening globally. And the word that keeps coming to my mind is the word violence. And I think that when we think of the word violence, we think of table flipping, I don't know, people becoming physically, whatever, aggressive. But we rarely discuss the silent violence that is less frequently identified and seen, whether it's by the way that things are communicated, whether subtly or explicitly, and the impact that has on those other impacts. You mentioned activism as well, Mandy, and I think that, you know, the lens that I look at things through is through my own research, was looking at theory of capital. That's Pimlinger's theory of capital. That's I was drawn to that, and I stuck with that, and I finished with that, and I still talk about that, because capital, in all of its forms, is what allows some people to join the conversation and other people not to join the conversation. There is no violence like silence. There is no violence like being silent. And I always invite people to look around the room and to listen, close your eyes. There was a practitioner, even on my course back in the day, where her study was all about doing the blindfold test in a medical facility to listen to end-of-life care. And it's amazing what our ears can teach us, right? About capital, about voice, about agency, and about who gets to get angry without consequence. Who gets to be expressive and verbal and to say to know what they've got to say and have no consequence. Soraya stood here and talks about repeatability, repeating, and the strategy of using repetition to get across whatever you want to get across. And there are some people who are quite privileged to be able to repeat what they've got to say as frequently as often as they like on the biggest platforms. And there were those who have been repeating themselves for the last 60 years, 80 years, and nothing has moved forward. Okay, when we talk about capital and its links to privilege and the habitus in which we all see things, the environment, the context, people spoke about context today, which looks the same for some and different for others. Okay, violence comes to mind. Violence is the deciding factor, the defining factor between those who get to be angry and get to be loud and get to say what they want to say and feel they need to say. And then there's the important message and who that important message impacts. And so I think outside of this, speaking to Elizabeth, stepping outside of this room, what does it look like? We go back to what feels fluffy, maybe a bit EDI, okay, fluffy. Okay? Hearing the word fluffy and EDI in the same sentence, or fluffy and allyship in the same sentence, is part of the problem. As long as we see that practical stuff of which you spoke earlier on as fluffy, the needle will not move. Back here, it's just the same thing. So it's really about asking, what are we aiming to achieve ultimately around voice, okay, around capital, and around addressing violence.
If anybody wants to, answer back that, because I'm mindful that we were also talking about the media and the kind of understanding of it, and obviously this is a little different route if anybody wants to. When I was listening to talk about,
No, it's nothing like that.
Okay.
It's just basically me reiterating that I really connected with what you were saying, because I was thinking about I come from a country where media is heavily regulated, and it's still a place where it is extremely regulated with no shame and no interest in kind of even hiding the fact that this is extremely regulated and controlled, and almost like this big other has left the room, and we're now just kind of looking at this media content without shame. And it made me think of the rule of threes that we really often kind of reference in psychoanalysis, and how rule of threes kind of give us the reality check. And when the free market allows for one idea to dominate such a big part of the market, then what ends up happening is people who are being subjected to the content, and they don't have their own reality check. They don't have their third thing, the third entity or the third mind, third ideology to kind of compare themselves to, compare the contents with. And even if we have a bunch of different approaches kind of trying to coexist together, that coexistence is constantly under attack, and is constantly trying to be purchased by more singular approaches, and then we go back to polarity, and then we're almost stuck in this sort of situation where we completely lost the track of the shared reality that would assist us in realizing genocide, assist us in realizing violence, assist us in realizing pain. It's just, it kind of changes it, and it translates it in such a singular lens that you can't really argue that it's wrong, because there is almost nothing out there to compare it to that would give you the language to kind of say something against that. The language is being ripped as well. So thank you. It actually really helped me clarify what I was thinking. So thank you.
Hey, just wanted to say to the gentleman in the yellow hat, I'm sorry what happened to your mum. Condolences, and thank you for sharing it. What you were saying about that split, like we all have to operate with a slight split between the environment and ourselves, and maybe some of us are more sensitive and we don't feel that split so much. So there has been a school of psychology, sociology that formulated an idea of schizoanalysis instead of psychoanalysis, that tried to dissolve the breach between the social and the person, and talk more in processual terms about what's happening between an environment and a person in an organic sense. So that might be worth looking into, because it might resonate with your mum's experiences. And Mandy, like, how do we teach kids in school some sort of psychology, sociology, and whatever that makes them understand like what is common to all of us, and then what is constructed by societies with an agenda that influences narratives and influences the way they speak and think and etc. Like, who's going to take on that mission? Go for it, Mandy. You do it.
When I'm the Secretary of State for Education in a few years, I'll do it.
Sorry, can I just one other thing? Harvey, was that John Mandy thing? Was that sarcastic or was that celebratory?
Let's discuss it.
Okay. You want to say here or not?
It depends. We can't say, because we don't know what Mandy would do in that position. I hold the opinion that all things start meaning well.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, our systems are not always optimized for us to achieve what we set out to do. So I say, go, Mandy.
Okay.
Right?
How about this then? Go Harvey, go Mandy, do it together. Does that sound better?
We should all be doing it together. That's the idea.
Okay. It's just because she did a talk, obviously, on educational psychology. That's what I said to Mandy. You said go Mandy in a slightly sarcastic way.
That's okay. That's me.
Yeah.
No, but what my sister here said so very well is, and thank you for re-endorsing my point, it's key, because so we've got some people at certain countries just suppressing the language, or suppressing the truth blatantly, and just saying, you shall have no hold of the media, we will give you your story, this is what you follow. And there is also the fact that there's a narrative that the most powerful corporations are able to switch their narrative because Coca-Cola either is the biggest supplier of funds in terms of corporate social responsibility, or they're pumping out garbage into water streams that are poisoning children and families for decades that they will never, ever recover from. So which one are they? Well, I'll tell you the one that you're going to find out. It's the one that says, buy my Coca-Cola when you go to Asda. It's certainly not the one that I took time to find out, So this is, I know it all sounds a bit sinister, but if you can't ignore the fact that that's there because it influences all the practice in the end, and also the practice that is taking place within the I'll say, mental health system, for which all this psychoanalysis, everything comes, because you've seen the opinion change. You've seen that in 1960, somebody with several personalities would have been seen that way. We can look at cases, Sybil or whatever, with her several different personalities. 30 years before that, you'd have been incarcerated. By 1975, you'd have been getting electrotherapy for that same thing. And, now in CBT, they'll tell you, well, you're several different people, depending on your circumstances, perhaps. And, perhaps you want to think about that? Maybe, So it's just about that contrasting, the several contrasting views at play. And so who will decide, is there a system that requires people to be paid to do certain jobs that universities are then promoting people to do the learning of, and so on and so forth. Or you'd have more children in the school system that were doing things that were practically about their skills and not just having to conform into maths and English and stroke discuss.
That's something I want to say that, I think that the world, there is a reality out there. And yet the stories that we make here in the university are particular kinds, and they are shaped by many different kinds of, agenda. I think so. Something that perhaps, has always bothered me is that, my position as a researcher is always very I'm always doubtful as to what I can accomplish within the university. Or that, what it means to, have our good intentions, to think that, okay, we're going to produce this change from within the university. It can do certain kinds of work, according to me, like we can educate, we can produce pedagogic models, we can, but the change that needs to happen is going to happen in many spaces, of which one is the classroom, perhaps the other is the clinic, and then there are 1,000 other spaces. So I think that it is the many realities of the university that perhaps we are discussing rather than the many realities of the external world. That there are these many different things that we're doing inside the university, inside the classroom, and if anything, we should be producing some more doubt as to what we are doing within the university. To change the university. I've been wanting to have a conversation with Mandy, perhaps afterwards, but about how, our students are tormented by the work, amount of work that they have to do, that they turn to AI. I think that, it is the university that asks them to be so hyper-productive constantly. And so, it is easier to then produce work through, this illegitimate kind of, means. And it is then the university that is forcing undergraduate students to be so, listless, uninterested. So, yeah, I think, so a bit of I think a bit of the conversation about, say, research methods or, the university is about the multiple realities that we inhabit here, and what we are trying to produce.
Hi. Something I wanted to pick up on was, I mean, it seems to run through a lot of what various people have said. Of course, you mentioned money. And for a few years, like I've been trying to think about, I come from a community context, and the structures and structural violence that prevents so much generative things, so many forms of wealth that provide a ballast against alienation, against the slow erosion of hope, of the everyday that keeps us smiling, like maybe a robin would sing. The birds sing, it's really important. Our sociological habitat, as you know, we've lived with things for 50 million years, and I've started to look for what has started to disappear. And so, as an experiment, and what I'm seeing here, what the event you've produced is without money. It's porous, it's open, and it's brought together on something other than capital. It's forms of wealth that cannot be extracted. I see in that and in people power and hope. So the wisdom is stored in the people. Knowledge is power, but maybe only when shared.
Alex is an activist with the Ragged University, which is an unfunded community organisation that develops knowledge, collects knowledge, makes knowledge available to people. Alex has been here reporting many of our events over the years, put them up on the Ragged University website, and he's going to be taking videos from today, and he's going to be putting them up on the website, so they'll be available to everybody for free. But the thing about money is that people think that they possess money, but money possesses them. And we're brought up face to face with that when we're trying to organise this kind of event. That we think we've got to put together a committee, we think we've got to ask for funding, and then the funding comes with strings. So the amount of time we spend running around trying to get the funding and to explain what we did with the money takes up more energy than it would be just to do it for ourselves. So I'd like to thank Alex for coming down and videoing this event today. I'd like to thank all of the speakers for contributing. I'd like to thank everyone who bought a little bit of extra food to share, because it's that kind of thing that makes this event possible without relying on the money and doing it for ourselves instead. Thank you for coming today. Stay in touch. Send us an email to discourseunit@gmail.com. Those of you who are in Manchester, I hope we'll see you in the anti-fascist protest at 11:30 in Piccadilly Gardens on Saturday. We'll meet again. Thank you. Bye.